Happy Tuesday to everyone. Hi all. Today with me I have the great pleasure of having with me Dr. and CEO of Henriques and Henriques. So we're going to go all the way to Madeira Island, to the Câmara de Lobos in the southern part of the Madeira Island. And Dr. Humberto Jardim, he will be joining us very shortly. I'm going to be talking about everything, all things wine in Madeira, the island, beautiful stellar wines. He'll be joining us very shortly. Thanks for joining in. Deep thanks to Julie Patterson, deep thanks to House Alpens, to the Madeira Wine Institute, and to Sotolon Selections, and great thanks to you all joining me. And I'm just waiting for Dr. Humberto to join us. Hopefully we'll have some time for some questions. Two Portuguese guys talking might take a little bit, most of the time that Instagram allows us to, but just waiting for Humberto to join us. So the beautiful island of Madeira has been producing wines for centuries, and the uniqueness of these wines is so indestructible. There's so much history behind the bottles that we're going to talk today. That's like living history inside of these bottles, and Dr. Humberto will be right now. There you go. Here he is.
Hello. You're good, Bruno.
Looking good, looking good. How are you feeling?
Thank you. Well, very well, thank you. Well,
very
good.
well, very well. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're a busy man. A lot of things happening right now in the island. Thank you so much. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to talk about the history behind these bottles and the long journey. And you're definitely one of the greatest minds in Madeira wine, and definitely one of the big faces, in my opinion, for Portuguese wine. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your words.
And I cannot wait to go to Madeira. I cannot wait to have you back here again. We worked together last year. Time flies. Hope to see you soon again, and having you bring your passion for Madeira wines and wine in general. Thank you so much. Please,
welcome.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're coming from, how you landed in the Henriques and Henriques.
Well, you know, I usually say that during our life, we make choices. We decide to have this or that course, to go into the university. To the outcome many times is not what we have chosen. And I think that the wine has chosen me, because my previous background is on financial. So I came to H&H in 1994 to the financial and general director. And I have to say that my experience in the wine was already good, because my father had a company and he closed it. It was called Dimão. And I was always used to have very good wine at home. I still have some of those old wines in my house from those times of my father's company. So to me also, it was, I worked with a friend, which was Luis Pereira, the previous winemaker here at the company. And for 17 years, we have been discussing about wines and discussing about the issues. And this is something which got into my blood. I love this, you know, this, I don't work. I have this as something with a lot of pleasure, you know. I go out of my house towards Henriques and Henriques with a smile, and but thinking of what can I do, and whatever will happen. It's something which has to do with more than work. It has to do with pleasure. And I have to say that probably the wine has chosen me, because my background, I started working in Brazil since I finished my course. And I came to Portugal. I worked in different companies until my experience was recognized for me to start in this company as financial, essentially, And here I am making wine.
And thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for the great work that you've been doing.
Very simple.
Cheers to that. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
I think like probably one of your challenges every day when you get out of your house, it's basically if you trying to figure out if you're going to put a coat, or if you're going to be on a sweater, or if you have to bring an umbrella, or have to go in a t-shirt, because the beauty of this island is just all these weather climates and all these different weathers that you can have on the same day, on the same week. It's just amazing how an island can express that way, and that totally expresses on the wines. So in the meantime, like Henriques, like one of the families can be traced for a long back, a few centuries, like in the history of the island, but founded in the 1850s. Tell us a little bit about Henriques.
Yeah, well, the Henriques, they have a military origin. So the lands that they have got were donations from the Portuguese crown. And they established themselves here in Câmara de Lobos and the Estreito. They were what they called in those days the landlords. So most of what happened there was production of wine, which was in those days the connection from Madeira to the outer world. We were selling this wine or these grapes in must to the British families, which made the internationalization of Madeira. Obviously, Madeira crossed several issues in history and somehow forced the family to establish themselves as a company and start to connect with the world. You can imagine 200 years ago, we wouldn't have so many people speaking English and having a perception of the outer world, how to connect with the merchants, whether in the UK, whether in the United States. We have reached there not because the Portuguese went to the United States, but rather than after the Treaty of Maturin, Portugal was buying the tissues from, as you know, from the industry in England, and we were selling the wine. And obviously we have been included in the connection to the other world, whether to the East Indies, to the West. And this is how we have got the chance to internationalize Madeira the way we have. So the connection in between our company was also with the family Cossart, so originally also England. And it was somehow this connection which brought also the culture of our presence in the United Kingdom the way we are. And somehow even the style and consistency of our wines brought from Peter Cossart. He made 53 harvests before Luís Pereira made 41. So you see, it's more than 90 vintages, more than 90 harvests connected. And this is somehow one of the big secrets of ours, was not to bring new thoughts, was to bring evolving thoughts, transmission of culture. When I say I worked with Luís Pereira, I understood what was written in the past and what was the aim for this company to go front forward. So it's a full line of understanding. I know what was the thought of Peter Cossart, even though I didn't know. I only knew his son, which worked also side by side with me, John, and obviously Luís Pereira. So this is, I sometimes say that the big advantage of H&H in terms of how we produce nowadays is to know what we have done. We don't bring new inventions to what we are doing well. We follow the same kind of pattern.
So you would say like the style of Henriques is more like in a little bit of a richer, intense, a little more powerful style of Madeira?
Yeah, I would say that. It also has to do with the fact that our aging conditions are very good. We have a steady temperature all over the year. When you mentioned the differentiation in terms of climate conditions, yes, but it has to do with the different locations. Because when you are in Funchal or in Câmara de Lobos, you usually have all the same kind of temperature, the same kind of weather. Then you go to the top of the mountains and you will be at 1,800 meters high, so the things will change drastically. And you have that. The valley in between Câmara de Lobos and the other side, the Estreito, is crossed by different stages and heights and the final outcome is exactly what you mentioned, differentiation in terms of the influence of the climate conditions on the grapes.
So
but
like
yes, our wines are highly concentrated.
So like, again, placing for everyone, trying to place Madeira again, archipelago from Portugal, but in the meantime, it's actually closer to Africa than actually it is to Portugal. So subtropical climate. That again, you guys have fog, wind, rainy days, cold, hot, like you have all these things going on, and a huge influence from the Gulf winds. But in the meantime, again, as you're saying, so you are in the southern part in Câmara de Lobos. But if we go to São Vicente, if we go to Porto Muniz, if we go like to the northern part, we're talking about the total different aspect of terroir, where the same houses are cellaring their wines, different exposure is going to totally be different from one house to the other. It's just like the same thing when you think about sherry and all those things too, like the way all the houses they cellar their wines. It's like the terroir of the cellars actually too, like where you expose.
Well, I would say that in Madeira we have that versatility, as you said, coming out from more than 1,200 wine growers, and we buy from wine growers in the north, which the outcome of their grapes is completely different, or seriously different when you compare to the outcome of the vines planted in Estreito. But at the end, you will, if you have experience, you will vinify these wines and blend them towards what you want. So obviously it makes a difference if you will say, I will vinify the Tinta Negra or the other, whichever other grape that you have bought from the northern side of the island. And those aspects will be very well marked. And this means, for example, when you have a single harvest, that is distinctive, because if that single harvest is coming from grapes from the north or from the south, you'll have a different outcome comparing even the same year, different producer. So, well, I will say the warehouse is going to make a huge difference, because you will use bigger vates, smaller vates, steel vate, temperature. You can be located nearby the sea, you can be located in the mountain. So more humidity, less humidity, losses are different. So the wines will be accompanied in a different way, and the outcome will be completely distinctive. When you blend, which is most of what we do, in terms of Madeira, you have the 10, well, 3 and 5, which are the cash cow and the entry level of our business, but then you have the 10, 15, 20. We have ranges of categories, and this is the excise and how we excel the art of blending. So it's two aspects. One is to follow the wines when they are being aged, and the second is to have consistency in what you do when you are blending, tasting and blending. That's the other side of the business, which somehow is the most important.
So basically, like again, like as everything in wine, but mainly like that's one of the beauties and uniqueness and the greatness of Madeira wines, that like everything starts from the viticulture to actually the cellaring, actually the maturation of the wine and the aging of the wine. It doesn't stop at the cellar. Like a lot of times we tend to think about certain wines, because you guys are allowing. We want oxidation. We want oxygen, like when other winemakers and other regions are not. So talking about the basaltic, volcanic, magmatic soils, very high in the city of Madeira, and then bringing like all the climate again, the varietals, like for instance, like your Verdelho, if your Verdelho is coming from the north, is going to be totally different in terms of acidity and complexity if it's coming from Câmara de Lobos. You are in Câmara de Lobos, all the oxidation process in the cellaring, and the aging at Câmara de Lobos makes all the wines so unique, and that's one of the keys that a lot of times you think that Madeiras are all the same. No, they're not.
Absolutely not. I can tell you, we have a warehouse at Quinta Grande, where we have our property with Verdelho. And we have seasoned and aged barrels at Quinta Grande, but we are talking at 350 meters high. So the temperature is way much lower. The humidity is quite high. The climate conditions, then, they are not as good as here in Câmara de Lobos. And I can tell you that a wine which can evolve in 2-3 years here in Câmara de Lobos will be at the beginning, whenever it is placed in Canteiro, in our property at Quinta Grande. And
So right now,
the losses are completely different. We have much more losses in terms of water, so it concentrates the acidity, sparks much more than what we have here. Here it's very well balanced. Let's say that the acidity will polish the wines, will bring you freshness rather than that perception of picking your mouth. And the balance in between the glycerol, what is holding the wine, is very well noticed. You can express the fruits of the wine, whether it is very fruity at the beginning, already transformed when it has crossed an oxidative process, or at the end when it is already all oxidized and you have the tertiary oxidation more on the alcohol, bringing out the spiciness to very old wines.
so that basically, a lot of times that's a little bit about the difference when you're talking about not only the managing and the time that you spent by doing the estufagem and the other way around, we doing the canteiro, which that's basically what you use with the canteiro. Explain us a little bit like how you do the canteiro, like if you place like your wines like in different stories, in different levels in the winery, how you do your canteiro.
Well, well, the canteiro usually is seen as the Solera system we know in Spain, but not in Madeira. We also have the canteiros, as you see behind me, in this way. So it's always layers of barrels of 700 liters capacity. It's the most adequate to Madeira in order to have wines which will have just a touch of wood. If you bring them down to young barrels, you will have a lot of wood, and then you'll have serious problems on these wines. So the point is distinguishing one the other. There's no sense of producing, on my point of view, 3-year-old wines with white grapes, because we have 15% of the whole production. We need those grapes to produce 10, 15. If I would have half, we would obviously have wines from Malvasia, Verdelho, Cercial on the 3-year-old wines, and we would even think of pairing them due to their characteristics with dishes, normal dishes. We have paired in if I'm not wrong, in San Francisco, Wagyu beef with 15-year-old Verdelho from ours, and it was very nice. It depends how and the way you serve your dishes. If you make it the normal dish that you think of a red wine or a white wine, you cannot imagine that you will bring a 20% alcohol, as much as you probably will not also think of a cognac or a whiskey. It's not the point to connect with the food. So you have to make it in tapas. You have to make it in a way that you will have both connections. Let's say that a wine which will be just up to 20 years, you will have a lot of complexities and layers of flavors which will pair with different dishes, starting from consommes, from raw fish, from sushi, sashimi, all of the other connections from pâtés. If you need a nice cercial for a pâté, that one is a different thing. That's a wine which goes wonderfully with dry fruits, not dried fruits.
So
because
let's start talking about the Terrantez.
Terrantez.
So
Okay.
again, like so, a lot of times, like again, so we're talking about Terrantez. We're not talking about Torrentez, nothing like that. It's Terrantez.
No, it's Folgazão.
It's
Folgazão.
So that's
Folgazão.
actually something that I'd like to ask you. Like it's Folgazão, because I still hear
Folgazão.
some
Folgazão.
Okay.
Nothing to do with Torrentez from Argentina, from Spain. It has nothing to do. The descriptors of you usually have 12 to 14 descriptors to characterize the similitude of the grape. The descriptors from Torrentez have nothing to do with Terrantez. Terrantez is Portuguese Folgazão.
And
that's it.
And for those who don't know Folgazão, you can find mostly Folgazão like in the Down, but nowadays you can see a lot in the Douro, named as Folgazão. Beautiful grape. In the meantime, so explain us a little bit what Folgazão is. Like I know it's a little what Terrantez is like. So like
we brought Folgazão to Madeira and to Açores, and both regions have classified them the wine as Terrantez, the grape Terrantez. I can't tell you when was it and how was it. If it was a confusion or someone wanted to to just name it differently.
Terrantez do Pico and Terrantez da Terceira, right?
Terrantez do Pico, yeah. One and the other, you know. But the point is, when you look at Terrantez, you are planting a grape which is difficult. Even in Douro, it's not an easygoing grape. And here, even more, because you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, it's a miracle what we do here in Madeira. Because being a subtropical, we are, as you know, 520 kilometers from Casablanca on a parallel line. So we have everything against grapes because we have a lot of humidity. We have the temperature fluctuation. It happens in different willingness to the grapes. You know, we are now during the day at 21, 22 degrees. We wanted to dormant these plants, and soon in February we will start to prune these to crop these vines to start our process the whole year, because we don't have winter. We just have a little winter, but most of what we have is against the production of grapes. It rains when it shouldn't. It is hot and humid when it shouldn't. It doesn't shine the sunshine during June when we want a lot to pass the green to the veraison. And it's a dramatic thing. At the end, what do we have? We have grapes which are the daughters of the vines. They preserve these daughters by managing the water, the sunshine, the photosynthesis, the nutrition, and they hold all of that as a survival mode on the bunches. But the alcohol is very low. So it brought us into the fortified wine, because obviously you can crush these grapes, you can ferment all the way through, but you will have 8.5, 9 degrees at average. And then you reach to March or April, and you will have vinegar. That's it, because the acetobacteria will work silently, but will work, and you don't have enough alcohol to stop that process. We also decided to alcoholize our grapes or wines because we needed to preserve the fruitiness. We don't make malolactic, so that malus effect is not broken. You have that appleish, malus from Latin, so that apple, it's very much there. You can find, well, I have this appleish on the green side when you move from Cercial to Verdelho, but you also have the same appleish cooked or as an apple tart when you move from Verdelho towards the Boal. So it's very much there. It's a flavor which is very much there. Then you can obviously characterize the different wines from all of the influences that has crossed the DNA of these grapes, because they will express themselves differently. We are not talking about Ruby, Tony, Oloroso, because it's not a blend of grapes. It's not a style. It's a grape. You say Malvasia. What Malvasia has to do with your connection. If you are in the United States, in France, in England, and someone tells you, well, you have here Malvasia, and what? If I don't know what Malvasia is about from the Mediterranean Bay, I will be thinking that I'm just having a wine, but I don't know if it is a single grape from a wine from a single grape. And that is Madeira. That is Madeira. And it has to be explained that when people get to this kind of wine, it's a luxurious wine, because you can get out from the traditional kind of food that you have. You get into a restaurant and you think, as the Portuguese would, a steak with an egg on it and rice and chips, and but come on, you don't think of fortified wine for this, maybe a red wine. But if you get out of that and you think of the gourmet from the French gourmandise, then you start to have some connection to Madeira.
And I think one of the beauties of Madeira, they have a wide range of possibilities. They're very versatile. If we really go put some perspective, of course we can go to cheeses. But for instance, like this 20 Terrantez, like for me, like we can go with charcuterie, but like we want to think a little bit more serious. Like I think this asks like kind of mushroomy truffle kind of dishes, like that kind of mushrooms, something like that. But even certain foie gras, depending on the garnish, if it's like a caramel
Absolutely.
honey and something like that, not necessarily like very fruit, something not that sweetness. But I think
Just the
this
foie
is
gras by itself, sometimes it's difficult with that one because it's a flowery wine. It's not, when you think of Madeira, you usually define fruits from orange, from zesty flavors up to chocolate and up and passing through caramelish flavors. But with the Terrantez, it's not like that. It's a style which brings out some spiciness and also that flowery flavor. So the white almond, the dry fruits, it's very much something that you think of all of the colors that you get on the dry fruits from almonds, from, everything which has to do to connect with that. It's something which goes pretty good with the Terrantez. It's a fine, let's say it's thin. If you move and swirl your glass, you will see that the wine it has weight, but at the same time, it's fine. It's very lean. We would say in Portuguese, magro. So it expresses itself on the balance, the acidity and the residual sugar. This is 72, 74 grams of residual sugar.
72, around 70 residual sugar.
70 to 74, yeah.
Okay.
But the volatile acidity is above 1. So it's if you compare the volatile acidity that we have on the other one, which is around 0.75, which is a single harvest 2007, did not evolve to that level. This wine, this is 5 different vintages. We got them together, we made them together as a single blend. And all of these wines, they have evolved in terms of the oxidative process to a much more complexity of layers.
So you basically you came up with these 20 with all these 5 vintages for Schweres, basically.
As you know, Madeira was producing 4 or 5 tons a year. We have planted in our vineyard 1.3 hectares. We have planted Terrantez, and at the moment we are already producing above 13 tons. So even some of the wine growers have opted for plant Terrantez. It's not an call coming in. I told you that I would have difficulty to suppress the calls. But anyway, the most important to tell is at the moment, when you look into Terrantez, I looked into Terrantez, the quantity was so small. I had barrels with 350, I had barrels with 700, and I said, well, what to do? Instead of losing 3 or 4 of them with 300 or 400, let's blend 5, which will give some quantity to this blend. And this is what we made. We blended dates which wouldn't be enough to make 20-something years dated wine. And for us, it's much better to allow people to taste a 20-year-old with a fair price rather to have a dated wine, which would increase, obviously, the markup in the market.
So you're saying like the very small quantity, very scarce amount of Terrantez, and you guys have a great chunk of Terrantez, correct?
We do. This is exactly what I was saying. We have planted 13. We are producing 13 tons per year, which is quite impressive because let's say that in 2010 to 2011. Madeira was the Terrantez in Madeira was very small. Nowadays, we are having in total 26, 27 tons from different producers.
So how's that playing with you? Not only like, of course, Terrantez having such a small plantings in the island, but overall, how is like real estate? How is like hotels taking places like in a lot of the spots in the island? How is that playing for Madeira and the vineyards? And the sustainability
you are touching a very hot spot for Madeira because Madeira obviously has almost 30% of our GDP generated by tourism directly, but you have other things, you know. And I think that for the future, to maintain the sightseeing that the tourists want when they come to Madeira, they want to visit the vineyards, we have to really have that in mind to help the young generation into getting involved on the land. We need professionals, and that is the connection that you were saying, because in fact, if you are going back 50 years, 60 years ago, the Bay of Funchal, where we have now the hotels coming from Funchal on the Estrada Monumental, it's being populated by hotels. And in the past, we had there bananas and vineyards. So it moved to Câmara de Lobos, but again, you start to have a lot of these properties. You take a picture of Câmara de Lobos, and every year pops up a house here and a house there. And, you know, due to the fact that a new branch on the tourism developed quite well, which is the private lodgement. So even these vineyards are having small houses to accommodate tourists which want to come and visit Madeira. But that is not easy, because we are talking of two peaks, Pico do Arieiro, Pico Ruivo, and 56 kilometers east-west and 25 north-south, you have a tiny island, and slopes are our agriculture. So we are a region on the volcanic wines, which has an intensive hand power, because, you know, people have to work. We cannot mechanize our vineyards, even ours, which is displayed not in pergola, in double string guillot.
So you guys are not traditional. You're not Henriques slopes. The plots, they're actually not traditionally. They're not mostly
pergola. Not in pergola. No, it's the same alignment as you see in most of the vineyards in Porto, with double string. And the way we do it, it's because it is at Quinta Grande, so it turns much more difficult at the height in between 350 to 700. We needed to have more air, less humidity, because there you have those, what we call the barras, with clouds, and involve our vineyards. So we had to make them breathe at the most, and at the same time to catch the energy from sunshine, which is the most important for our photosynthesis. This is why we have decided not to plant it in pergola. And well, successfully, obviously, we are producing Verdelho in a very good production yearly.
Okay, talking about Verdelho, I think it's time now.
Yeah. Well, Verdelho, I like these two very much, whether Terrantez, whether Verdelho, because they are on the same level of residual sugar. Yeah, that's the one I have here also. This the residual sugar for this, it's around 70 grams. And I find, even when you connect with Verdelho, Verdelho is the grape which here in Madeira, I think, produces the best table wine. And that is one of the good advantages to look at it and say, we can have fantastic wines out of Verdelho and profit Verdelho the way it is to be a hook mark in Madeira. Because in a way, you cannot hide behind sugar. You can say, oh, this wine is nice, but it can have 5 Beaumet, it can have 140 grams of residual sugar or even above, and you will say, it's yummy, I like it. But maybe the wine is not showing the fruitiness, all of what you will understand. So on the other side, you can hide the effects behind the acidity. You can make these wines which are pungent, and you say, wow, oh, my mouth is full and this is punching me. Yeah, but is it what you are looking for when you are tasting a wine and you want to have that clash of acidity in your mouth? Absolutely not. Even your body, when you are putting a lot of acidity in your mouth, you immediately start pouring a lot of saliva to balance your pH, because it's a defense to your body. Your pH is the secret for your lifespan. So the point is, talking about acidity has to be freshness. And that is one of the things that Verdelho brings out very well. And then the flavors. The flavors are very easy to identify for most of the people because we know oranges, we know marmalade, we know a lot of sauces on the fruit side, the fruit salad. You have nectarines, you have tangerines, all of these peaches. They are easily identified. Depends of the style of the Verdelho from house to house. For example, in our, you can get all of that and also a little bit of eucalyptus because we have our vineyard surrounded by eucalyptus. So during the flower season,
I was getting a little piney eucalyptus. So
piney, absolutely. That kind of, it's coming out from that, the fact that we have 10 hectares displayed in a valley surrounded by eucalyptus. So obviously during the peak of the flower season, they are absorbing phenolic, which are in the air also. And we have those, that is immediately on the nose. Then you can get the orange peel, the orange confit, you can get the peach, you can get the
queen's marmalade, that queen's
marmalade. Absolutely. That is why, because you get that marmalade with that little bitter side of, you have the sweet bitter on the marmalade, which is coming out from the fact that this wine has aged already. So it transformed a great part of the initial fruitiness, which is the fruitosis, and then it moved towards the cooked, the tartatin, the apfelstrudel, the apple pie, you know, all of these flavors which are connected with the aging and the spiciness, the little spiciness at the end. You are very much, when you're tasting this wine, you are very much hooked in flavors, not in profile. You will not say, oh, the acidity, the sugar, this, it's not something which is touching you. It's the nature of the grape itself which is talking to you, and you are looking for flavors which are in your reference. This is why one and the other, when you pick up the comparison, you will say, well, to reach,
yeah, someone's calling Humberto.
that we another call. This is a nightmare. But anyway, the point is, you will get these two connections, one which will show already when you taste, and if you go back to the Terrantez, you will notice that spiciness, that evolvement of the curry, this effect. You see now on the nose, this effect of the wood, the old wood, it's furniture, it's you opening a drawer of the grandmother's. The wood is very much there.
Talking about wood, so this spent 12 years in oak, but what kind of oak? Is this Brazilian oak, that kind of?
Well, we have different oak, but these wines, they go into American oak. These barrels that you see behind me, this is American oak, or usually we also have satin wood from Brazil. They are very inert. The connection in between the linen is very good. Let's say that we are talking about a molecular exchange in between wood and the wine. As much as if you have, let's say, a strong wine, it will give more to the wood than it will receive. Imagine in the wines that you know, when they are light, they are highly influenced by the wood and usually jeopardized. They have to cross just slightly the touch of wood. But Madeira needs to have strength. You have to have some extractions on the skins. You have to have a lot of anthocyanins to color these wines strength, because it will be submitted to enslavement, as I usually say.
That's something that I feel on the Terrantez. I feel like a little bit of a tannin nerve, like there's quite of a tension of actually tannin and acidity tension that goes really well. I feel a little bit of a tannin bite that I think that's what holds to me, like the Terrantez, like being so persistent from beginning to the end. Just to make sure, like another thing, like I think fairly Madeira varietals, they can be fairly wrongly taken by other varietals. And let's talk about Verdelho. So again, in continental Portugal, we have Verdelho, but it's a different Verdelho, not the same Verdelho that we are tasting right now, not the same Verdelho.
Now, what we have in mainland Portugal, we even have to be very careful here, because sometimes we ask for Verdelho from what we call the viveiros, the place where they are planted and released. And maybe you can receive Gouveio. which is the
Exactly.
kind of
Which is the
Verdelho. But the descriptors are different. So when you look into the leaves, the drawing on the leaves, it's very like Verdelho, but it's not the same. And the outcome of Gouveia doesn't have the personality of Verdelho. Verdelho is something which is probably, the wine is coming near to your heart, and the other one is much more on your pupil.
For me, like I try to be as clear as possible whenever I'm talking about Verdelho. Again, continental Verdelho, it's the Verdelho down, the Gouveia that you normally would see like in the Douro. And you go to Spain, they call it Verdelho. And it's not the Verdelho that you find in Spain. It's not the Verdicchio that you find in Marche.
No.
It's not the Verdelho that they name in Umbria and Sicily. And it's not Pinot Blanc. So like there's all these kind of things about that I would like to have you like to clear a little bit a little bit of the history of Verdelho. And on that note, I actually have something for you. So we're talking about the single harvest Verdelho 2007. And in the meantime, I actually have something here for you.
That is a super wine. we were not to talk about that, but that was a wow wine, isn't it?
I still have this close, and this is gone. Love it. I still have it.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit what's the difference of these two Verdelhos, going from single harvest to the vintage Verdelho that I have here.
Well, the issue here, you can say two things. You can say, well, I have chosen a special Verdelho which was from this or that property. And you can also say, I have blended Verdelho in the profile that I like, and I have aged that in my warehouse. And I also can say some other thing, which is I used the Verdelho from that year to make, and we all do, we have every single year the accounts near the Institute to produce 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old. So we are diminishing the accounts, dated accounts, to the business of blending. And after a while, you don't have much of that. And after 20 years, you start understanding that, wow, this wine surprised me, because many times is what was left. You are leaving it in the warehouse and you pass by, as many times I do, and you are looking, oh, I have I go with the Argao and that, oh, this wine is fantastic now, so maybe I should prepare it to be bottled as a vintage. So this is, to be honest, what you do. If you want to be natural in your warehouse, if you have wines and if you age them, cool and at easy. You are not forcing anything, you know, mixing this and that and moving the barrel here and from the, you know, the top to the bottom. No, there's a natural process for it to go and to show what it is. I have to say that we had that 1991 into a level, and this is what I want to say. We start, when you want to distinguish, we start different stages. Let's say that after 40 years, 50 to 40 years, you lose most of the phenolic compounds, and many times some of us will have difficulty to distinguish a Boal from a Malvasia. It depends where it has been aging, because you can have Malvasias which have aged in places where you have it more on the dry side, and then you lose alcohol and they become very mellow and very sweet. And then you move to other warehouses where you have a lot of humidity, and what goes off is water, so it becomes a little bit more pungent. But I'm telling you, you can have barrels on the first floor of H&H, the bottom floor, from the same year in different barrels. At the end, I will taste it and I will say, what do I want from this? Because the wine has different versions in different barrels. It interacted differently in the warehouse. And this is naturally how it goes. 1981 has gone into a process of oxidation, which at this moment, it still shows. You saw when you tasted that wine, and you checked that it had an incredible personality. you were not expecting that. You have sent the wine, you saw, you understood that perfume, and you could immediately identify what was there. But suddenly, when it came into the mouth, you said, wow, this wine is exploding, but exploding not on the wrong way. It was not alcohol, it was not acidity, it was not residual sugar. It was exploding in flavors. Your mouth was immediately going back to your brain and saying, wow, what do I have to do to understand this wine? And this is exactly what happens in most of the people who don't have experience tasting Madeira, because there's no point for you to give a 1981 or even older to someone who is tasting Madeira for the first time. They will say, "Blacks." They don't understand. They don't have references. It's like you have to educate yourself. And this is where it starts. When you want to distinguish this baby vintage, I would say, this young vintage, 2007, you search here different. You are being impressed in a silky way. It's like someone touching your shoulder and you look aside and say, wow, what you want? But it's not, nobody's pushing you like the 1981. The 1991 struggles with you and wow, what the hell, you like that? But it's a different way. The 2007 is, peering on your shoulder, and you have a nice conversation, easygoing wine. You cannot have that with the 1981.
I have to tell you, I'm first and foremost, I'm a musician. That's what brought me to the US, and I've come to the realization that the best, I have to be honest, the best talks that I have on vineyards, winemakers visiting here, or when I visit on my wine trips and everything, the best talks, it's when they're very art driven, or they're actually doctors, or they're actually architects, or they're actually geologists before and first and foremost than being winemakers. And for me as a musician, I had a conversation with this Norwegian rock guy that he's making wines in Barolo, he's making wines in Champagne, and he's a metal guy, but he's a great wine lover, and he started to make wines in these regions. And we were talking, and he was telling me, Bruno, for me as a musician, easily I can see sitting down when I'm composing, when I'm writing down a song, you bring this, you bring that, you bring this, you bring that. It's like making champagnes, it's like making the Madeiras, it's like all the art of blending. It's the art of blending instruments and, different dynamics. And when I went to Georgia a few times, most of the winemakers in Georgia, they're not necessarily winemakers, they're not enologists. Someone like you, they had in the family, the parents had vineyards and they had to go to war and they came back, let me go back to the history of the family and start making wines. And I had the most beautiful conversations that were wine related, but seeing in a different perspective as an architect, as a doctor. It's just amazing. And I can see that from you, and just amazing the way you express, the way you describe. Wine, it's very interesting, and I totally love it. So I see that as a musician, and I can see that. I love the way you describe your wines.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So on that note, for me, thinking about when you're by yourself right now, you gave some time to your staff, a little break,
Yeah, I will tell you, the fact that we had this pandemic, which obviously brought us into the ground in such a way, we worked during the summer season. We usually close during the summer holidays, August, because even bottles, glass, everything has to come to Madeira. We don't produce bottles, we don't produce proper labels. We can produce labels, but at the level to have it properly done, we have to print in mainland Portugal, and everything we do out from grapes and wine is coming to the dressing of our wine has to come from somewhere else. And most of these factories also closed. There's no point for you to have 2 or 3 people on a bottling line, because you need people to be holding the different functions, whether feeding bottles, controlling how it is going, and until the filling of the boxes. So the point is, it's better to close down and have everyone at home. But with this COVID, I asked our team to work during the summer season for us to dispatch the orders that we were receiving, and I said, I give you another week. At Christmas, Madeira, we celebrate Christmas strongly, so we close usually on the 20th, and we reopen on the 3rd, 4th of the next year. This year I gave 1 week more, so now I'm alone in the warehouse, but I'm happy, very happy. I can talk with the wine and nobody will say that I'm crazy.
This is like this one right now, like the Verdelho, like I'm I don't know, some kind of like gravlax, smoked fish, Asian flair, Asian cuisine, something like that. Like if you go home, like what would you like cook like with this 2007?
Well, it's not that I would cook. I would probably, I wouldn't get into that. I would have a cigar, you know. I'm dreaming with a cigar. I will arrive home. I will have my number 4 Partagas. I pass the whole day with this kind of activities. So, but the point is, this wine is wonderful with some cheese. It's not that you will make a plate full of cheese and you will savor one. You have to respect the wine. You have to pick up a manchego, you have to pick up some dry other, but say, I'm going to do this, and have the wine the way it has expressed itself. Because obviously you can say, but you can make a consommé. Yeah, I can make a consommé, but you can also do with the duck leg in the oven, which comes out rusty, and you like this. Absolutely, yes. You can make a combination with some pâtés. Yeah, I can do it. I can use it with the chorizo, with some other thing. But this is the point: is simplify. It's not simplify. It's simplify. Make it in the way that you will say, I will take profit of the wine, because this is not a. I usually have an expression which is, you can use Madeira to complement your dish as a complementary. You can season your fruit salad, you can make a sauce with some nice wines, and it depends on what you want to do. But you can also add value, because if you can tell me, Berto, I like to make special desserts or special dishes. Okay, you want to choose a special wine, which will be adding value to your dish, to whatever you have decided to cook, even a soup, even a special plate with mushrooms, a special plate. I wouldn't say egg. Egg doesn't go with most of the fortified wines because of the proteic connection. It's very difficult in terms of flavor. As it is for Madeira, the buttery cheese, our Portuguese serra, it's a difficult cheese to go. You need tannins, a lot of tannins to hold the top of your tongue filled with the tannins, and then you can place that butter. But with strong Stiltons and blues, all of these cheese which are somehow struggling with you, again, you need to educate yourself to tolerate a blue or a Stilton, or that goes wonderfully with Madeira, because you will immediately associate the opposite flavors. And sometimes, obviously, some complementary flavors, they complement themselves. But the point is, what do you want to do with Madeira? Do you want to use it for, or do you want to use it as, if you know what I mean, as an added value, as something which will highlight your art as a cook? And you also can say, well, I cooked with Madeira, I cooked with Champagne, I cooked with Armagnac. That's the point. You didn't say which kind of Armagnac or which kind of Champagne or Madeira. But when you think of a special dish that you have cooked with the strawberries, with mirtillo, with all of these, red fruits, you will say, well, but I have chosen 2007 Verdelho from H&H.
There you go. And on that note, to experience the whole experience again, like I always like to talk about and bring up the proper glass, where then in my point of view would be always kind of an AP glass, not necessarily small glasses, but there's so much flavor and aromatic.
This is the usual one that I use here, as you have more or less there. It's the same. You have to have a glass which is not too big, not to give too much room to the alcohol, because it depends where you are, but the temperature which should be at around 16 at 18 degrees Celsius here. So if you go, it depends of what you are having, because if you're having an extra dry, we have an extra dry with 25 grams of residual sugar. Madeira dry starts, as you know, around 45 grams of residual sugar. But we have a Monte Seco, which I usually serve it chilled, but really chilled. I mean, 8 to 10 degrees, and it's wonderful.
We go like to 14 Celsius, like around 55 Fahrenheit.
That goes wonderfully, because you don't catch it too much in terms of the flavors. You don't allow the alcohol to express itself too much also, so you can have that freshness and balance. Your temperature on your body will be cooler, but suddenly, as soon as the alcohol, well, you obviously will rise the temperature of the liquid as soon as it gets into your body, but also it will be enhanced by opening the flavors through the effect of the alcohol. As I say many times, the wine is an unstable being, very unstable being. It's always willing to go somewhere, and it doesn't want to go together. It wants to go alone. So alcohol to one side, water to the other side. And the point is, to get this together and stable, you have to find a way for it to like also how it is. So the temperature has to be the right one. The content of what it is, it also has to be the right one in order for you to profit. And I mean the content, the glass, because if you open too much or make it too big, it changes completely. I wouldn't say, come on, let's not be too fancy on it with glasses which have to be this and that. But, you know, the average size of a glass like this, with this kind of design, closing a little bit, you can scent the wine, you can keep the flavors of the wine, and the wine, it goes on and on the tasting.
These wines are indestructible, but in the meantime, keep them upright and being at proper temperatures as well. On the final note, we are almost done. We have like about 2 minutes. Final word to the world, thinking about 2020, the future of Madeira. Final word, what do you have to tell us all, positive notes to all of us?
Well, I think that we are all in the positive side now, because as soon as the vaccine is there, I am eager to have the vaccine. I don't want the consequences of the COVID in my body. So I think that we usually say that the future will be different, but I think that as soon as everyone is being back on the vaccine and protected, we will go on and on with the same expressions of mankind. We are very indisciplined, as you see. Even with COVID, everyone is trying to violate and being together and getting in restaurants and all of that. So we always have to force people, come on, play your role. So my message is keep the pace until we have all the vaccine, because after that, that's peace and love.
Exactly. Peace and love in Madeira. And we all stay calm and drink more Madeira.
Absolutely, do that.
Humberto, I'll see you soon.
Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. And thank you to Julie. Thank you to H&H. And thank you to the Institute of Madeira to make this happen. I'll see you soon in Madeira, in Portugal, in New York City. Até breve. Abraço.
Thank you.
Obrigado.
Abraço. Thank you.
Cheers.
Look forward to it. Obrigado. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you.